when it comes to the topic of Bitcoin and cryptos, I probably had at least 1,000 conversations where I taught from beginners to go zero from one, right? And I love doing that, and that's why I actually started that website before. Obviously, it didn't feed me enough where I could just use it by itself, but I did that because I enjoyed it, right? I love seeing that moment. People going, "Aha! I get what this is. I get why people are getting crazy over it."
Hey guys, welcome back to the Orange Pill Club. Today I'm joined by Simon Lee, who's previously the founder of Crypto 101 Notes and also Las Vegas Crypto 101. He currently works with Circle and helps out with enterprise development. Simon, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good, my friend. Long time no see. I see you on the social media channels, and I think I was telling you before this recording. I think you have one hell of a use case, especially that regards Bitcoin, and I think where a lot of people want to use it for it. But I'm pretty sure we could talk about it a little bit later.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot with NiHowdy. I've been really excited growing this company, but yeah, I mean, like Simon, so could you briefly introduce yourself and kind of give some background on, your journey right now with Circle?
Sure, sure. So my name is Simon Lee, originally Los Angeles native, and moved to Las Vegas in 2021. And I guess I'm a younger millennial. I mean, that didn't matter. But my career was I actually been in like the pre-sales, sales organizations for different industries. Dabbled in startups here and there, and then later on went to corporate matchmaking, where I'll invite executives to a cocktail hour so they could meet with vendors. And then right afterwards, I actually joined the AI company, a conversational AI company. And after 2 years of being at the conversational AI company, this is around 2020, 2021. And my passion for Bitcoin and crypto actually grew exponentially, right? I've been in the scene for a while, but that's when I really dive deeper and see, what it's really about. And then I decided to move to Vegas to start a crypto scene because everybody sees Vegas as like a gambling and service hub. To an extent, you can't really blame people. But I thought there's a lot of actual opportunities here because there's no state income tax, as well as the local government is trying to grow the tech scene. So here I am today. I'm in Vegas. Eventually, while I was staying in Vegas, I had my website and I was doing local meetups, and I saw the organization Circle. And for those who don't know what Circle is, they're the company and the sole minter of USDC, which is US dollar coin. Think of like a digital dollar on the blockchain, where I've been with Circle about 2 years now. So that's it so far. Um, pretty boring and pretty boring and standard, but it is what it is.
How's the scene out in Las Vegas for, the Bitcoin and crypto community out there? Is it still pretty small or is it growing?
It's pretty small. Like you're not gonna get quality conversations a lot here. So if you're in San Francisco or Los Angeles and New York, you'll run into somebody who knows their stuff, right? And they'll actually talk about what is the value of money, what is the value of transferring money at the speed of the internet. Vegas, I had like one or two conversations. A lot of times here, again, it's a budding scene here. A lot of times there's the typical token shillers, the NFT, hey, buy my NFT club kind of thing. And again, you'll see that everywhere. But I think the difference is that Vegas still doesn't have that quality of people yet. And I say yet because I'm starting to see a lot of flows, and I'm pretty sure you heard about a lot of NorCal people moving to Vegas as well. So, yeah, just that's it. That's where it is right now.
Yeah, I have to say the tech scene here in the Bay Area, it seems like I would say it's fizzling out and definitely a lot more talent is leaving California. Vegas is actually one of those places where I see a lot of like great tech talent moving. So that's pretty cool that you're kind of there in the central hub right now.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I moved here to like not stay here for only 5, 10 years. I want to settle my roots here, right? And just being real, it's only like an hour flight to Los Angeles, so it's not that bad, right? And also, I see my friends more often while I was living in Vegas than in Los Angeles because traffic. There's not that much traffic compared to Los Angeles, and two, everybody wants to visit Vegas. But yeah, it's a growing scene, and not just for like crypto or tech, but everything in general. Like you see the news about them opening the Sphere, which is a pretty cool venue, and new sports teams coming in and out. So it's a great place to be right now.
So let's talk about your journey into like either crypto or Bitcoin. I don't know if it was, Bitcoin first that, you sort of found, or was it, Ethereum or one of the other cryptos? Like, how did you first learn about Bitcoin and what made you say, hey, I'm going to dive deep into this?
Yeah, so for me, my first time was in college, and just like everyone, and this is about a good 10, 11 years ago, when you first hear about Bitcoin, you're like, well, what is this stuff, right? And when I first saw Bitcoin, my friend actually had a Silk Road account, or his friend had or something, and he showed me, and I was like, what is this Amazon of drugs thing? I was just like, just flabbergasted. What is this, right? And he said, yeah, you buy Bitcoin and you spend Bitcoin to buy these things online. And I'm like, oh, so it's just video game money, right? Because now, I used to play Maple Story when I was young, so I was like, oh, I get that concept. So I didn't think much about it, right? And then around 2015, 16, I heard Bitcoin again, and I was like, oh, that internet money thing. I was like, what? It's like $1,000, $2,000. So and I'm gonna just be honest with you, just like 99% of the people, I bought Bitcoin because I wanted to get rich. I was like, yo, let's put some money, let's gamble, let's go, and like it's intriguing because I first stayed in for the gains and the speculation, but I started to question a lot of things, right? Like, why does this asset move 24/7? How come nothing moves 24/7 but Bitcoin and these crypto stuff? And then I start to ask questions like, because while you're going through this journey of like questioning Bitcoin, you hear about, oh, Bitcoin is the next money and whatever the case might be. And I was like, all right, how could it be money? And I was like, wait, what is money, right? And then I started to realize I didn't understand money, because most people don't really understand money. Period. You use it every day, you transact it with it every day, but you don't think about what money really is and how historically has a big place. And some say, I'll even argue that it's bigger than the internet, but nobody really talks about money like that except like nerds like us.
So I mean, what is money to you? I mean, that's kind of a good question that you brought up.
So I'll give you the short answer first, and I'll give you the long answer. The short answer, and I'm borrowing this answer from the one and only, the person who wrote the Internet Money, Andres Antonopoulos. Somebody asked, what is money, right? Money is the way we communicate value. It's a communication mechanism where you're able to trade goods for. So if you think about it from a historical point of view, nobody still don't know exactly how or when, but somebody said the shiny yellow rock called gold has value, right? We don't know if it was James Johnson, Sarah. We don't know, but it's crazy to think, if you look at Bibles, historical, I guess, history books to Quran, it doesn't matter. Money was always there. And if you think about it, people from thousands of years ago were able to trade with one another with this common currency, right? This common store of value, this thing called gold, without the internet, without having Google Translate, without having airplanes. And I tell people all the time that every time money evolved, right, the new economic activity has been unlocked. So I'll give you an example, right? So money went from gold back to fiat, or I mean, to be fair, fiat's back then too, but I'm not gonna get into that. But we went to debit cards, then we went to PayPal, then Venmo, right? And every time money evolved like this, we had new kind of like technologies or new businesses that went around it. So to give you an example, Amazon Prime, right? The thing that you order on Amazon, you get in 1 or 2 days. That's not possible without credit cards, right? You can't do Amazon Prime with a checking book that you need to send through snail mail. Like, it just doesn't work like that. But because you're able to make a payment on your computer right away with your credit card, you're able to have instant services like Amazon Prime. So that's a long way to say money's great, and that's what money is, a communication mechanism.
Sure. So what's like one insight or aspect of like Bitcoin that you wish other people knew? Like, is there something, people just don't know and you feel like they need to know about this certain thing about Bitcoin of what makes it so special?
So I think I could go on this at least for 2 hours, but I'm gonna give you a short term version. I think one you need to understand is that most people, I think, don't understand Bitcoin because most people don't understand money, and I don't want to offend any a lot of people, and a lot of people are not financially literate as well. I think there's a correlation there, because at least people who are financially literate or someone are in the stock market or anything, they kind of understand Bitcoin in a sense, right, compared to the average Joe. And then secondly, like, to understand Bitcoin, you're not able to understand it within a month or 2 weeks. I think it took me a good full 6 months to a year of deep dive, or like trying to understand what it is. And like the way I like to break it down to people is that Bitcoin's hard to understand because a lot of things that you understand, you could see from one lens, right? Stock market is an asset, right? Okay, like money, like dollar is a currency. Okay, a computer is a stuff, or electronics, whatever, right? But the way you want to understand Bitcoin is through three different lenses, in my view. Is one is the monetary lens, like what is it from like an asset point of view, right? And then you need to understand from a technological lens, where like how does this thing get powered? Like, what is blockchain technologies? What are nodes? Like, are Bitcoin miners actually mining stuff? And then third is the social lens. And that is the most important lens in my view, because Bitcoin was created in the wake of the great financial crisis, right? And there's actually a lot of symbolism behind it. Why did Satoshi Nakamoto, he, she, they, it doesn't matter, right? Why did they create this during the time when government was giving bailout to banks and organizations that should not go on bailout? And that, if you understand through that lens, you can actually able to connect it a lot better. So yeah, that's what I say. You need to see from all three different lenses.
That's really good insight. You mentioned financial literacy. When I was growing up in high school and going through college, I never learned anything about financial literacy. And I'm just wondering, is it something that you were self-taught about, or did you have like a curriculum on college or high school that taught this to you, or is this something you just found out on your own?
Um, I think it's a combination of I was like always somewhat of a self hustler when I was a kid, and I learned by myself, right? Like I come from like a middle class or working class family, and like my family didn't really invest in stocks, right? Like they didn't even buy a house when I was young, and like so in that environment, it was just like, okay, well, I thought money was something to use, and I just wanted to grow I wanted to make money because I wanted to spend stuff. But like, as I got older, like people talked about stocks, and I was like, okay, what are stocks? Okay, so you buy this, it's a representation of company equity, whatever, and bonds. And it was just fun to learn more about, right? Obviously, it got hypercharged when I found out about Bitcoin, and then I started to learn the history of money itself.
Sure. What is it like been trying to educate maybe your mom or dad, your parents, or someone who's not familiar to Bitcoin? What has that experience been like for you?
Okay. So that's a two-part answer. One is I'll tell you this right now. When it comes to the topic of Bitcoin and cryptos, I probably had at least 1,000 conversations where I taught from beginners to go zero from one, right? And I love doing that. And that's why I actually started that website before. Obviously, it didn't feed me enough where I could just use it by itself, but I did that because I enjoyed it, right? I love seeing that moment, people going, aha, I get what this is. I get why people are getting crazy over it. So I love those conversations. And again, a lot of times it's going back to the lens of like, they need to understand all three different lenses: the technological, from a social point of view and a monetary point of view. My parents, yeah, they're probably one of the few people I'm still having trouble communicating what this is, because one, they want me to speak in Korean to them because I'm ethnic Korean, and two, like, to them, I think, especially for older generations, something that is digitally native, they don't think it's real. They inherently think that's not real. Whereas if you talk to like Gen Z, right, like buying skins on Counter Strike or whatever Fortnite, it's normal for them. Like that's a representation of who they are. Whereas the older generations are like, that's crazy. You're wasting money. So you try to layer it on top of, hey, this is the first decentralized asset that doesn't need a central party that you can use it for payments. Like it kind of goes over the head. So usually, what I like to explain to them, and because they always ask me, how much does it cost and all that stuff, and I say, hey, it's just simple. It will be, it's digital gold. It has limited supply that will ever exist, and nobody controls it. And yeah, it's we're early. That's it.
Yeah, you're clearly very knowledgeable on the topic of Bitcoin. So I think that's
Yeah, thank you, thank
your
you.
enthusiasm is it's awesome. I remember the first time we met, you had this like bandana and it was just like Bitcoin on it. I was like, dude, this guy is like, I love it. He's such a mood to hang out with.
Oh yeah, I
But
mean, it's my signature at festivals now. Anytime you see it, if you go to an EDM festival, you see some kind of Bitcoin bag or a Bitcoin tank top, most likely it's me. So yeah.
so, what specific aspects of Bitcoin appeal to you, sort of in your line of work currently?
So So for those who already know the scene, there's like, when you enter the Bitcoin crypto scene, you meet different kind of tribes of people. Just like how like there's different NBA fans, you see the Bitcoin maximalists, right? These people are like Bitcoin only. It'll change the world, to like crypto enthusiasts, where hey, crypto everything, tokenize everything, right? I think even though I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist per se, I probably tend to project towards that way from a philosophical point of view, right? Because I do think that it's easier to grasp, in a sense of like there's limited supply and it's the first of its kind, right? And at the same time, I think from an ethos point of view, like the whole aspect of decentralization, the fact that no one controls, or the fact that it's all over the world, like that is very important as a new concept. And I think what's more important is that I actually saw the use cases of Bitcoin before happening before. So there was this movement called the End SARS movement. This was 2018 in Africa, where actually the corrupt government, I forget which part of Africa, but like they cut off banking access to these non-government organizations, right, for protesting and stuff. And they're protesting about like, police brutality. I mean, you think police brutality is bad here? I mean, in corrupt countries, I mean, they just take everything they want from you. So like, what ended up happening is these organizations couldn't get any banking access, and they accepted donations through Bitcoin. And the government couldn't stop it, right? So that NGOs were able to use Bitcoin to buy food and water and get the protests going and stuff. So if you actually Google NSARS and Bitcoin, there's an article about it that gives more detail than what I'm saying right now. And to me, that was a good example of like why money is so important. Why money should be a neutral settlement asset, right? Like in this world of like, you know political correctness, like I think we're entering a dangerous age of like money being political, right? If you're not able to use money because somebody doesn't like your political views, no matter how bad it is, I don't think that's ethically right? Just like how everybody has right to breathe air, I think everybody should have the right to use money in a certain extent, right? Obviously, if it's like really really bad, like I mean it's so obvious, like they're terrorist organizations, then yeah, I get there's a different story from that, right? But right now, like you hear stories about political opponents not being able to access funding, or you're able to hear, or you hear stuff like where different countries or different people cannot send remittance payments without paying 20 to 25% because of some political nature. And I think it's a dangerous thing, and I'm very passionate about that. And then connecting over where I'm at Circle, it's funny because Circle is kind of USDC, specifically the stable coin, is kind of the opposite of Bitcoin, right? Because it's collateralized by U.S. dollars. We're still in the purview of the government. We try to be as regulated as possible, right? But I think, in a sense of like I said, every generation money evolves. I think stablecoins is an evolution of money, where even though it's not completely decentralized, even though it's not this libertarian utopia of like governmentless money, I think stablecoins is the next evolution where you're able to solve a lot of problems, which I'm able to see at my organization, at Circle, where you're able to see remittance payments go down. You're able to see people actually get more value from their money by without losing 20-25% per transaction.
Sure. That was a really good story about, NSARS in Africa. Like that's a pretty cool use case. One of the cool things about Bitcoin I've always saw was like the fundamental property rights behind it. Like no one can really take it away from you. No one can really seize it. You saw how Russia was essentially cut off from the SWIFT financial system. And that really sucks for everyday Russians who don't really agree with the war. It's like all of a sudden, their value of money is gone. I've always looked at money as the ultimate freedom of speech. You can use it to do whatever you want in this world. And, that's the way you can sort of express yourself. If you want to go buy cosmetics, makeup, if you want to go buy hookers and cocaine, then, that's how you express yourself. But again, that's just kind of an extreme example there. But yeah, thanks for the insight on that, Simon.
Oh yeah, no worries. Again, like again, this is I think more conversation needs to be had like this, right? Because look, the people who talk about money usually are people who already have money and economists and PhD. I think normal people need to get get more comfortable about talking about what is money, right? Like it's like talking about finance is already taboo for whatever reason in our society, but like I think talking about money doesn't really adhere to it. It's like, hey, how come the money that I use right now is not as worth as before? Like how come and people feel it, right? Like people go like, hey, my grandparents were able to buy a house with $5,000. Now $5,000, that's a month of rent for some people. So you know
It's crazy. What are your thoughts on the current central banking system that we have here in America?
hmm.
I mean, with inflation just rising and interest
I'm,
rates going up, we
I'm
printed already half our money supply this past couple of years.
So I'm gonna take a very mid-curve view on this. I do think there's a place in the world for central banking, right? Like I'm not a hardcore libertarian, even though I lean that way, or I'm not a hardcore Bitcoin maximalist where hey, we need to get rid of central banks who's inflating money. I think there's a reason for central banks, and I think good example of like the depressions in the 1920s, right? It's one of the main reasons that they, same central banks were actually born out of that era is because once there was no borrow last resorts, or once there was no central entity that could kind of help with the economy, we went into a Great Depression. So I do believe there's a place in the world for central banking. What I don't like right now is the dishonesty of the central bankers and the very fact that you can't really be wrong. 'Cause, like, 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 you can't really be wr in that position. So what I mean by that is about 2 years ago, right? I think 2021, all the central bankers were saying, hey, this inflation is transitory. It's transitory. Okay. Well, we all know, the average Joes know that, hey, it's not transitory. I mean, the Arizona tea that used to be 99 cents is $1.69 now. All right. And like, even if let's say we have some kind of economic crash coming, those prices are not coming back down to where it was before. And I think the biggest problem is that obviously there's humility behind it, but like government officials, right? And as well as central bankers, they will never admit that they were wrong, or they'll never admit that. So like, most people don't even know what they do, right? But like these people don't even admit that they're wrong. Second, like a lot of these folks who are economists or I think PhD, I don't want to be that typical guy, but they never had a job in their life, and like they don't understand how real economy. You're a business owner. You went into different. You know how hard it is to make sales. You know what it takes to pay employees and have the economy going. But a lot of these folks, they just based on their theories, based on what they read, instead of what they actually see and what they experience. Yeah, that's my take on it.
I agree with you there. I think they're a bunch of technocrats who just regurgitate the same information that other people have told them, and they don't really have a mindset of their own. But yeah, that's essentially how I also view the central bank as well. So, switching gears, are there any specific Bitcoin projects, innovations, or use cases that you currently see and excite you at this current moment?
Yeah, you're gonna hate my answer, but I personally think so. There is a camp of people who the Bitcoin should be more utilized. I tend to believe what Bitcoin is right now, a simple store of value and as a liquidity asset, right? So I tell people all the time, if you there's three things: a Tesla stock, the Japanese yen, and gold. And Bitcoin. Sorry, four things. Which one is the most liquid? And the answer is Bitcoin, right? You could actually change Bitcoin for local currencies almost everywhere in the world. So it's pretty powerful in that sense. And I think even the whether it be a meme or whether it be what fundamental of Bitcoin of 21 million, I think it's an easy concept for people to grab, so they can actually store their savings behind it. I think that's good enough, right? I do follow along all these different progressions that's going. I mean, I used to follow along this guy named Paul Swords. He's the guy behind Drive Change. It's not implemented on Bitcoin yet, but his vision was to use the Bitcoin main chain and have different side chains so that you could do whatever you want, right? So like basically you could tokenize anything on this Bitcoin side chain. I was interested in that, but I don't think that will be ever implemented. I do think the Bitcoin ordinals is, which is also known as Bitcoin NFTs, is very intriguing, and not for like the value of like, oh, is there the next CryptoPunks on Bitcoin, or is there the next Bored Apes so you could make millions? So, I think Bitcoin ordinals is very intriguing because you're using the Bitcoin blockchain, right, which is the oldest blockchain, which is the most decentralized blockchain, although some people might argue, and the powerful things about NFTs is that you're able to authenticate data that goes on it. You're not able to duplicate it, right? And once that data goes on that blockchain, you can't erase it. So, in my view, in the days right now where government censorships are going along, where people are changing informations on Wikipedia like there's no tomorrow, right? I think that if we need some kind of source of truth that cannot be altered, I think the Bitcoin blockchain used as like a historical Wikipedia in a sense, where people could upload kind of stuff, right? I think that's very powerful. Right? And now that being said, it could be a double sided. Right? What if somebody put fake news on the Bitcoin blockchain? That's possible too. But again, Bitcoin doesn't care, right? It's neutral. Whoever uses it uses it.
So, have you minted anything on ordinals?
No, I shoot myself in the head. Like I never got into the. I follow the NFT scenes, but I always like this is not a great idea. But then again, I missed out on so many good gains on NFTs, but I follow along. I'm just a speculator from afar.
Very cool. So, what are some exciting developments right now that's happening with Circle?
So I can't reveal all the information I have just to be, just to make sure our legal team knows I'm not doing anything bad. But Circle right now, we're actually again, we're focused on the growth and distribution of USDC. And before, I think we cater to the crypto natives and hedge funds a lot, right? Because that's where majority of our volumes are from. But now we started to actually work with other fintechs, especially in places like Brazil or in Latin America, where they want some kind of dollar instrument, right? So we're actually working with these companies to see if they could utilize USDC as a payment rail, but the user doesn't need to know what it is, right? So somebody from Brazil could send $8 to somebody in I don't know, in Mexico, right? All they see on their app, it says, oh, you sent $1 to Mexico. But in the back end, instead of using banking rails or Visa rails, you're using stablecoin rails to send that transaction, and obviously in a safely and secure way. So
So, are,
some remittances and fintechs and payments in a sense.
so are those rails with, say, stable coins, are they much cheaper and much more efficient than that of Visa? Like, what's the differentiation there?
So I think, and this is where I think a lot of people get confused too, right? Like when you send a Venmo transaction, go give you an example. You're not if I'm sending $20 to you through Venmo, like I'm not sending to you directly, right? I'm telling Venmo to tell my bank to tell your bank to send $20 or specifically in Venmo in a sense, right? Or when you're swiping your credit card at a liquor store, what's happening is that there's a lot of like authorizations that's happening that Visa is helping throughout the process, right? It's like, oh, this card issuer is telling this person to pay this amount so that this get exact this amount. So for doing this service, Visa usually takes 2 to 5% depending on where you're at in your business cycle, or I guess where you're at in general. Um, Whereas, assets like Bitcoin or stable coins, they're what you call final settlement assets, right? So whoever holds it owns it. So it's like digital cash. So in this sense, you're sending digital cash to somebody in the world. It doesn't matter where they are, as long as you have their address, right? Like an email address. And they get that without a middleman in the middle, right? Circle does not have to be in the middle of the transaction for you to send me $100 worth of USDC to me or to anyone else in the world, right? There's other transaction fees that goes along with the network. This is fairly commonly known as gas fees or transaction fees for crypto, but usually that's a lot lower compared to using intermediaries like banks and Visa, right? Even another good example is like if you want to send $1 million worth of dollars to somebody in Japan, you need to go to the bank. You pay a $25 wiring fee, right? Well, if I have that person's USDC address, I could just send them $1 million right away on a Saturday night at midnight, and that person will have it. I guess the different question is how does he offer it? How does he or she offer it? Different story, but from a transaction point of view, it's very efficient.
Very cool. Do you see smaller businesses or larger businesses like publicly traded companies moving towards this sort of payment rail that you're describing? Or do you think there's still a while to go?
I say there's a while to go, but I want to give a comparison. So, like, I think in the 80s when credit cards first came out, I think less than 5% people used it. Right now, we have people who only accept credit cards or Apple Pay or whatever. Right. I also think while I think we're in that phase right now about stablecoins, I also think unlike credit cards, I don't think stablecoins will be in the top of mind of the consumer or the business owners. I think what's going to happen is that these payment processors or maybe these ERP systems, right, where they take care of your cash register, right, like Square or something, where you pay for a boba on the little iPad and you pay tip 15% and all whatever, right? I think it's gonna be like that, where it'll be integrated within those systems, and it'll just say dollar amount, right? Maybe there'll be a euro. There's already like a euro stablecoin that we have, right? Maybe there'll be a yen stablecoin, or maybe a Korean won stablecoin. I think that's all gonna be integrated in the back end without the consumers even knowing what's going on. Kind of like the internet, right? Where every time you go to www something, you're going to the website, but you don't know exactly what's happening on the back end. You don't know what HTTP is doing. You don't know what kind of the normal person doesn't need to know what's going on that on the technical level. And I think that's because the same thing's gonna happen with stable coins, where the normal person would not even know they're using a stable coin. They just know that it works and it's cheaper, and that's it.
Sure. If there's one thing you could fix in this world, what would it be and why?
This is like the Miss Universe question, but honestly, I'll keep it simple. I think it. How about this? I'll have a world leader answer and my pragmatic answer. So the pragmatic answer is I wish the world would be more financially literate. So I think less people fall for scams, more people know how to invest, right? And kind of build your wealth. Because I don't want to be the bringer of bad news, but it's hard to make it in the world with the salary, right? You should, in my view, everybody should try to be an entrepreneur. Everybody should do something. But I think financial literacy kind of helps with that. I think it helps you to plan for business. It helps you to build your wealth for the future and retirement. So that's my pragmatic answer. I wish everybody's more just financially literate somehow, some way, right? My world leader answer will be I wish there will be a forum or some way that people could disagree and understand why they're disagreeing. There's nowhere we're gonna always agree with each other. That's just, it's just the way it is. That's life. But I wish there's a way we could disagree and try to understand why we're disagreeing, and maybe there could come a solution, right? And I think that's the problem with politics right now, where you're on this side or this side, you're Republican or Democrat, you're Trump hater or you're Trump lover. It doesn't matter, right? So I just think there should be more disagreements to be done more civilly, in my view.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty hard, though. At least the way America's heading right now, everything's very reactionary. There's just definitely a lot of blowups, and no one can seem to really have a conversation that's just one on one and discussing about the problem. It's just a lot of yelling. And I think that's the sad part. You should be able to debate and talk about certain ideas, philosophies. But yeah, sadly, I feel like we're moving away from that direction and just reacting to everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts or messages you'd like to share with our audience?
I do want to give a NiHowdy plug right here. I do. Like, I'm not doing this because you're my friend or anything like that, but I think you have one hell of a product, right? I think for those people who want to like get exposed to Bitcoin, I think your product is amazing. Lowering prescription fees and you're saving rewards in Bitcoin, right? Like, I don't care about saving 50 cents, but like, if somebody say I get like 50 cents in Bitcoin, or I'm like, okay, well, it's worth keeping. Like, I think I have my attention to it. So I think you have a great product. Second, I just want to tell people like, there's this famous guy named Neil Howe. He's the guy who, I don't know if you know the term fourth turning. So like, he's the guy actually who created this term millennials in the 90s. And he predicted in the 90s, he wrote a book about it, right? Look at Neil Howe. And he said the decade of 2020 to 2030 is going to be one of the craziest decades that we'll ever experience. And boy, is he right so far. And the logic behind that is that every basically fourth generation, the institutions that have been working society before them does not work anymore, right? So like, a good example right now is nobody trusts media, nobody trusts any of the government. Like, Congress approval is all time low. And what happens during this fourth generation society is that change happens where there's new a societal contract with the government, with the people, and with society in general. So the last time was the greatest generation, right? Those people who came out of World War II. And back then, if you're a veteran and you lost your arm, right, they'll say, hey, thank you for serving your country, and that's it. But what happened in that, people couldn't stand that, right? Like, you need to, sir, you need to protect the veterans, you need to give them veterans benefits. While this was happening, the civil rights movement was happening at the same time, right? So another good example of the fourth generation was actually, Nihao talks about it, was the George Washington generation, right? Where we know what happened with George Washington. I mean, he founded one of the greatest country ever alive. And so like, right now we're in that period of chaotic societal period. Like, I think everybody feels that, whether it be through inflation, whether it be political, I don't even know if you call that politics, tribalism, whatever. And I think people should be aware. And instead of being scared, I think people should prepare. Right? What do we mean by prepare? You should become smarter. Smarter doesn't mean that you get more degrees. That doesn't mean anything. It means that you need to be knowledgeable in certain subjects. You should be financially literate. You should make sure that you understand what's going on, so that you're not manipulated with 24/7 news or information that just keep going to you because you're reading Twitter or TikTok or whatever. So, that's some of my bland vanilla 101 answers right there.
You're drawing some interesting parallels. If this author and yourself are absolutely right about the next couple decades, I think we're in for a wild ride, unfortunately.
I mean, think about it. What happened? Think about what happened the last 3 years. The previous Japanese prime minister got assassinated. COVID to the riots, January 6th. That's just America, right? Compared to 2010 to 2020, it's not that much. 2010 to 20 was a pretty easy ride. That was our glory years of being in college and being young. But I think I think the crazy part is we have yet to see more bigger impact events happening. I mean, within the last year, we saw Ukraine, Russia, and you're seeing his whole Hamas and Israel thing. So like, I don't think it's got to stop anytime soon. But instead of being scared, you should prepare yourself.
Yeah, sadly, that's kind of the direction we're heading. It's kind of interesting you bring up some of those large events during the protests of George Floyd. There was all of these different protests going across America, and I used to own pharmacies back then. My pharmacies got looted that day, and I just remember
Jesus.
being really like sad and depressed. I was like, I don't think I want to be a healthcare provider anymore. I'm like burnt out already with COVID. But yeah, it was just difficult to see like society and just everyone in America just really upset over something. Yeah. I guess, we're hitting the end a little bit, but what are your social media channels and how can people reach you?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm one of those people who like just reads and likes here and there, but I'm under stablecoin Simon. Very fitting because I work for a stablecoin company, and I'm also active on LinkedIn, right? Uh, Under Simon Lee, that works under Circle, and usually those two are my best channels to reach me. Obviously, if you're a friend, you could text me or Discord me here and there, but those are my best channels so far.
Very cool. Thanks, Simon, for being on the Orange Pill Club podcast. I appreciate your time.
Of course, appreciate your time, and yeah, I can't wait to see your company explode because you have one hell of a use case.
I think it's kind of interesting. So, I mean, this is it, but if you want to talk about NiHowdy, I'll just we can talk about it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. What is the feedback you are getting? Because like to
Fucking
me as a
crazy.
to me as a
Yeah.
Bitcoin person, I'm like, oh, this is it, right? But like, I'm kind of curious, like, what's the feedback you've been getting?
So I spend a majority of my time educating healthcare providers. So doctors, physicians, surgeons, pharmacists. It's a mixed bag. A lot of them are very resistant to the idea of Bitcoin. And that's because a lot of doctors, they just say, look, I just work more hours and make more money. Like, I don't really even think about retirement. But when I start to tell them about all the issues of drug rebates that happen in the industry, how drug rebates pretty much benefit the entire industry, but except for the customer, that's kind of when they start getting interested. And I start to tell them, like, drug rebates, they have never ever gone back to the everyday customer. GoodRx, the largest publicly traded company, they clear about anywhere from 500 million to 800 million annually, all based on out-of-pocket prescription costs. They do zero work. They're just the middleman. All the labor and cost of goods, the drugs, that's all borne by the pharmacy. So it's kind of a disgusting model, in my opinion. So where I've kind of came up with this idea was like, why don't we just pass back drug rebates to everyday customers? I try to see what we could do with cash. It's impossible. I can't Venmo you like 30 cents. If I were to mail you a check for 30 cents, I mean, postage is already like 35 cents. I think it's going to 40 pretty soon. So I looked at it and was like, all right, well, Bitcoin, you could do it. If you batch all your transactions and do it once a month and you pay it out, the transaction fee is like 1,000th of a percent. It's really cheap. Plus, what's really cool about Bitcoin is it's an asset. This thing will appreciate in value in the future. I don't know what's going to take, but get this free rebate in Bitcoin, check it out in 5, 10 years and see what happens. If it covers the cost of drugs, then I think it's a really cool way of solving out-of-pocket prescription costs. A huge issue that even America can't even solve. We keep throwing so much money at it. I don't want to bore you too much about medications, but there was something recently passed by Congress called the Inflation Reduction Act. This gave CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to renegotiate drug prices. They took the top 10 drugs for this quarter. It was like Xarelto, Eliquis, Humira. You may or may not have heard of these drugs. And they pretty much said, we're going to cut our spend by 30%. So all the pharmaceutical companies like Johnson & Johnson, they're going to get a 30% haircut in the next couple of years. If I'm a pharmaceutical company and I'm getting paid less by Medicare, I'm not going to chalk this up as a loss. What's going to end up happening is I'm going to reduce my rebates that go to every state Medicaid program. And I'm also going to reduce my rebates to every large employer. So what does that mean for the everyday individual? Well, if you're between the ages of 18 and 64, not covered by Medicare, that means you're going to have higher deductible, higher copay, a higher share of cost, and the drugs you're currently on for whatever health condition, it's possible that that might not even be covered by insurance anymore. It's a fucking ticking time bomb that's waiting to happen. The Inflation Reduction Act also allowed CMS to conduct a survey, and they basically said, look, drug prices are going up every year, but how much is that going up relative to the CPI? It gave the power of CMS to claw back that delta. So if the drug price went up annually more than the CPI, then yeah, they get to claw back the difference. And everyone knows the CPI that's reported right now is fucking bullshit. That thing's so underreported from inflation. Like, I'm sorry, but no one believes that.
Yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen to new drugs that come on the market? What I'm going to do is exorbitantly price this drug, taking into consideration I can't increase it year over year. This is a fucking ticking time bomb in this industry, and no one's talking about it. Everyone's just saying, oh yeah, Medicare or older people will have to spend less on medications. Yeah, but it comes at the expense of everyone else. So I look at this business model, I'm like, yeah, I think NiHowdy here is a great solution for a lot of people. People are going to have to buy medications once in their life, probably. And sometimes they might not be covered. I think a majority of people in America, they don't have adequate insurance. So I think, that's where we sort of come in.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's pretty cool that yeah, I feel like you're hitting like three birds with one stone, right? You're tackling the issue in the medical industry. I think you're introducing people to this asset, right? That is very new. That's a digital native asset, and then you're also using the benefit of low transaction, right? So just like how you mentioned about like the postage fees, and you could just use a Bitcoin transaction fee. It's much easier. So I think it's pretty cool. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
I love it, dude. I mean, when I first came up with this idea, I was like, this is fucking crazy. I went to so many publicly traded companies to talk to the C-suite about this idea. I got kicked out of every single meeting. But there's a few where, the C-suite would call me back. They'd be like, oh, my kid's interested in Bitcoin. I just want to learn more. But yeah, I mean, just working these relationships for 3 years, that's how we got a network with 35,000 pharmacies across America. We've had sales, and I've done like zero marketing. We've had sales in like 8 different states. Like, I don't know anyone in Kentucky. I don't know anyone in New York or Louisiana. It's like buttfuck middle of nowhere. But I think it's just cool that people are receptive to this idea. But, what I was kind of telling you before the podcast, like only 2 to 3% of the world owns crypto. Of that 2 to 3%, how many own Bitcoin? Probably a little less. And of that percentage, how many actually use it to transact every single day? It's a very small percentage. And unfortunately, I see all these dApps and application startups trying to focus on payment remittance. I'm like, we're not there yet. It's still too early, in my opinion. But the way to onboard more people is like just by giving it to them for free and just say, hey, look, I know you don't want to invest in this. You're just probably still skeptical. Here's 30 cents that you would never have received. This 30 cents would have honestly gone back to the shareholders of GoodRx. So you can just benefit yourself and just see what happens 5-10 years. And if it covers the cost of medication, then I think we've solved a really cool problem here. But I think what's really cool with NiHowdy is there's other adjacent industries I can apply this model to. Like travel is a big industry. You have Travelocity, Travelzoo. If you didn't know this, they collect anywhere from 15 to 25% of the gross stay from every small boutique hotel operator. That's a lot.
Jesus.
And they don't provide any value. Same with a few like food. We used to own skilled nursing facilities, and we pay a huge fee to like U.S. Foods, and they take so much value away from the farmers. So
it's interesting. Like, oh, sorry to interrupt, but like it's interesting because like I kind of see this on the reward space in a bit, and like I myself actually saw some multinational companies really want to use blockchain for rewards, right? Using I think Starbucks Odyssey is a good example, right? That they're actually using I believe Polygon blockchain, and they're using the stamps as NFTs, and if you have a certain amount of stamps, you get a benefit. So this space is growing a lot. And and to me, you're actually one of the first ones that's using Bitcoin in a sense. I mean, who knows how this will go in 5-10 years, but like, again, like, I think you have the right idea, man. You know what's funny? I remember when we first met, you were talking to me about the idea, and I was like, oh, I get your idea. You do this and you do that. And you were like amazed that I actually understood the business model. I kind of remember that.
I was just like, man, because I rarely get to meet people that know about crypto and Bitcoin. Most of them are just NGUs, like number go up. Okay, that's all I care about. Like I actually look at the fundamentals. Like this is like the TCP/IP of the internet, but for like financial transactions. Like I get the same feeling when I first found out about internet at my aunt's house. I was on the computer, found out what Ask Jeeves was, AOL chat room, Space Jam, Hamster Dance. I was like, oh shit, this is actually kind of cool. But that's the same feeling I sort of get. And yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's honestly just a huge science experiment at the end of the day. But I think I'm hopefully I'm right on this. But yeah, I mean, there's other adjacent industries to tackle after this one. So I think being the first company to say, hey, look, we solved out-of-pocket prescription costs. What's the next thing we can solve? I think that'll be really cool, at least for a story behind a company.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.